Listen carefully, each and every one of you. At the new Galactic Archives, I am a senior historian. My name is Cass Thra, and I would like to introduce myself. My purpose in coming to you is to tell you the story of the most underappreciated species in the galaxy, and how they made everyone else in the galaxy seem like cavemen. A little minute, if you please. All cavemen, pay attention. The Galactic Council, which consisted of a group of haughty creatures who were largely aquatic and sat in crystal towers on Centory Prime to make decisions on issues that directly affected species from millions of different worlds, was under the impression that they had everything under control. After that, they came upon individuals. As a result of the fact that everyone is aware of how intelligent individuals are, my students often question how the Council could have made such an error in judgment. However, please wait just a moment. As a result of their unbounded wisdom, they paused for. The first assumption was that Earth was a planet of doom that could be controlled. Oh, you must be kidding me. After them, they were aware of the rudimentary fusion motors, the weak planetary defense systems, and the little presence of humanity in the colonial territory. Despite the fact that the Council was fiercely opposed to the idea of a spacefaring civilization, it was apparently the objective of the humanity. In that case, people, you will not be able to form colonies there, since doing so would put the natural flora and animals in immediate danger. During this period, the Varian Empire was in the process of removing whole systems. In addition to that, you are required to register the concept of that ship. They would begin by alerting us that the Zenth Collective was in the process of building spaceships that had the capability to break apart worlds. During one of the first council sessions, I was able to overhear High Counselor Zax giving a lecture to Earth's Ambassador Chan about the need of responsible species management. Chan was sitting calmly and smiling gently during the whole conversation. They were so accommodating, charming, and nice, and they rocked every rule, regulation, and patronizing pat on the head with those. Everyone claimed that they were so wonderful, and that's what everyone said later. They were smiling and adjusting, but it seemed as if they were unaware of the restrictions that were placed on their mining rights, and the fact that their terraform applications were denied. The Council took it as a sign that humans had finally found their place in galactic society, despite the fact that they seemed to be happy with themselves for having included a race from the planet that had died. If they had done any research on the topic or paid more attention to those smiles, they would have realized that humans have a certain amount of patience, which they would have already recognized. The act of being courteous does not signify a lack of strength, and those smiles were more akin to warnings than accepting the situation. It was at this time that I waited for my speech membranes to get moist that the activity truly started. Beginning on what they refer to as Standard Cycle 2847, the Council began its fatal waltz with human patience. When I go back to that particular day, I can vividly recall how oppressive the rooms were, because of the constant stream of pretentious dignitaries and their never-ending stream of speeches. And what seemed to be yet another typical restriction on human activity, High Counselor Zax, who was standing on the middle platform, announced in his annoying harmonic voice that the expansion of human life into the Orion Spur must be immediately halted. While all was going on, Ambassador Maya Rodriguez of the human delegation was sitting in her booth. According to the records kept by the Council, no human diplomat has ever smiled while they were representing their nation. This is a moment that I really ought to have recorded on tape. The somber tone with which she addressed the renowned Council gave the impression that Zigzu's hubris had been boosted by wine when she was participating in a mating ritual. The warning that this decision will have consequences was communicated by the tone of her voice, which had a condescending tone. A swarm of shocked murmurs spread around the room, as if someone were attempting to warn them about the consequences that would result from their decision. Experienced jostler sorrowing, Jostler patted the sleeve. Despite the fact that it seemed ludicrous, it was difficult to avoid feeling awful for the topic, since several members of the council laughed in a real manner. The rapid expansion of your species is causing other members to become more worried about the influence it will have on the stability of the galaxy. I was unhappy with even the most fundamental movement that Maya Rodriguez took, which was to raise her eyebrow. She let the sentence to hang in the air as she repeated it, making it seem like a plasma charge that was on the edge of making an explosion. She responded with a tone that had a trace of trepidation. "I see." She then proceeded to call out a data crystal and a dazzling blue format standard council, after which she said that she need your approval in order to vote on this restriction. And the RAND's complete eradication of the real system's resources placed you at ease, she said. I am. Make some forecasts on the state of the economy. The subsequent events were a mix that was both shocking and terrible. Rodriguez started out by providing a full and formal explanation of the many ways in which human enterprises have grown important to the economy of interplanetary trade. For example, human transport businesses were responsible for 40% of the interplanetary freight. Human mining operations were responsible for 35% of the production of rare earth elements, and large hospitals have used human medical technology 60% of the time. On the other hand, you are becoming an intolerable threat to the universe, and because of this, we have no choice but to restrict your personal development. 3. Rodriguez's laughter sent a powerful message, which was neither angry nor sarcastic, but rather evocative of a child's certainty that the sky is green. Both of these emotions were present in Rodriguez's laughter. She informed the Honorable Council that the resulting quiet was tolerable. You misunderstand. I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you this so you'll realize why halting human growth will entail an instantaneous 47% decline in galactic economy production, she said. On the other hand, a few members of the council began checking their data pads in a hurried manner, and one of the representatives even turned a shade of purple. Immediately after Rodriguez's restoration of his well-known smile and his emphasis on the fact that, as a matter of ordinary business policy, we are required to limit our development and activities, the unparalleled economic extortion that had been zacked ended. In spite of the fact that the damage had already been done, the vote had to be postponed. Unbeknownst to them, the council had been covertly working on something much more powerful than warships. Economic interdependence, computers, and historical records. In its zeal to reward people, their ignorance prevented them from learning about this. When Rodriguez informed the council about human spaceships moving about the galaxy and human companies stealthily accumulating resources, the council should have realized that humans not only plan for success, but they also plan for calamity. This is something that humans do. They, on the other hand, were seized with excitement so that they may see the first public show of human descent. Excellence. It was ultimately their infinite wisdom that made the decision to increase the amount of effort they put out. When up against the united force of the Galactic Council, what chance does a lonely race hailing from the planet of death have? It was going to dawn on my younger pupils like a supernova that the Council's reaction to human economic maneuvering was about to become more transparent than ever before. It was their intention to obstruct the Earth. That much I can tell you is that they did all in their power to prevent the planet from being extinct. Nevertheless, we have arrived at the most exciting section of the story. Zax, the 7th Counselor for Enforcement at Fleet High, was most likely waiting for the humans to arrive at the school. As a response to this enormous show of might, the Sol system was surrounded by 100 warships that were arranged in the traditional blockade posture of the Galactic Council. The commander of Earth's Defense Force, Admiral James Chen, who is known for his seeming lack of ambition, became engaged. According to the information that you have provided, Chen was well known for his exceptionally calm demeanor, which is thought to intimidate potential predators. Chen delivered a straightforward message consisting of 3 words upon the arrival of the Council fleet, which read, "Welcome to the Council." As a result of Chen's desire to extend an invitation to you to see a mining operation, he responded in this manner. In point of fact, many members of the Council fleet started exchanging humorous communications about fundamental strategies for diverting the attention of humans. When Chen made the announcement, he referred to it as Operation Rockhopper. While everyone's attention was focused on the barrier, human mining vessels were silently making their way across the asteroid belt. Both Saul, the chairman of the Council, and Krell, the stern and variant Krell, insisted that humans immediately comply with the embargo. An offer to see a mining operation was made by Chen as a kind of compensation. In the past, humans have always been interested in conducting experiments on asteroids. However, these were not your average mining spacecraft. Forgive me, but the rock trucks were brand new XM457 Wolverine versions. I apologize for the confusion. Following the approval of their design by the Council and the conclusion that they were not harmful vehicles for resource extraction, they were given the go-ahead to start their usual mining activities. In a courteous manner, Chen expressed his apologies for any gravitational disruptions that may have occurred when the mining ships engaged their gravity-optimized manipulation fields, which were seemingly designed to redirect asteroids. What Chen had found, on the other hand, was something very different. Not only is the formation of a gravitational lens fascinating, but it also occurs when many gravity fields are exactly aligned, when all of a sudden, every neighboring asteroid becomes a potential missile. The Council fleet is smack dab in the middle of what Chen would later characterize as a pinball game the size of a solar system. Chen would later describe this as a gigantic pinball game. Chen responded in an open manner, as if they were intending to have lunch together, despite chaos squawking over the talks. "We are only involved in mining operations that are legal. In the event that our ships come into contact with our..." Because of the surprising mobility of the asteroids, the Council ships had to break formation individually in order to escape. This is not something that we are concerned about. Every time they made an effort to get back together, they were inevitably dispersed by the subsequent wave of mining activity. It was the fact that nobody fired a shot. That was the most thrilling component. At the time, the solar system was being reshaped by humans using civilian technology that had been formally sanctioned. It is unfortunate that the Council was unable to put a stop to it. It takes 3 days to complete the astronomical ballet, and Chen projected that your fleet would be considerably higher than it already was. The Council fleet withdrew to a more secure location, maybe outside the solar system in which we are located. In spite of the fact that they referred to it as a strategic redeployment, everyone was aware of the genuine situation. It was able to clear the orbital lanes of the Earth without breaking a single limitation that had been established by the Council. The occurrence, which became known as the asteroid humiliation, was a peaceful kind of persuasion among humans and other species. I indicate this with trembling voice membranes, in historical notation. While everything was going on, everyone was paying attention to Chen's stunning display of... This was only the beginning of the military's passive hostile behavior against the civilian population. While this was going on, human spaceships were secretly traveling across the galaxy, diverting supply lines and installing unusual technology in mining operations. These activities were taking place in hundreds of locations that seemed to be unconnected to one another. Despite the fact that the Council was still hurting from the failure of its blockade, they paid little attention to these preparations, since they were so focused on finding a way to retroactively identify gravity manipulation as a weapon. They were not taking into consideration the bigger picture, which is why they failed to hit the target. Are you able to believe it? There was not a single individual who retained their smile. It's almost as if they forgot that the pre-storm period is the most dangerous that the Earth has ever experienced. As a consequence of this curious human concept of sand dunes, nobody anticipated what was about to happen. In contrast to the majority of animals, when it comes to constraints, humans are quite clear about where those boundaries are. We are going to talk about the consequences that come with crossing certain boundaries, and blunder of catastrophic proportions was made by the Council on Tuesday. As it made its way to the Centory colony on a typical Tuesday, the medical ship Hope's Light was carrying vaccines against a particularly hazardous strain of space flu. These injections were delivered to the Centory colony. Dr. Alexandra Patel, the captain of the ship, was already well known in 3 different sectors for her competence in emergency medical care on earlier occasions. The decision made by the Council was the worst thing that could have occurred, not even coming close to being the worst thing that could have happened. An intelligent strategist came to the conclusion that this would be the most effective method to demonstrate how weak people are. And as a result, this hospital ship, which was manned only by medical specialists, was humiliated. Just as Bringer, the vessel that is responsible for enforcing the Council's regulations, was able to capture the Light of Hope at the Proxima checkpoint, a comprehensive search was requested by their commander, Dr. Patel, since he was concerned about the possibility of illegal goods. If we wait any longer, children will die, and there are 200% higher chance of dying in an electrical shock. So many people are in shock. We can't contain the flow of power any longer. If we wait any longer, children will die. A warning shot was fired by the gunners of Vextool, and the plasma burst missed Hope's Light by the narrowest of margins, exhibiting all the intelligence of a Globan that has been concussed. Novu. In spite of the fact that there were no reported injuries, 3,000 doses of vaccination were thrown away. My responsibility includes providing a description of Dr. Alexandra Patel before to the onset of her present ailment. In the course of 30 years, she had been responsible for saving the lives of a great number of people from all across the galaxy. It is possible that she passed away as a result of nothing more than a sneeze released by one of the creatures that she had cared for. During the time when she was under the impact of pirate assaults, she really carried out surgery in zero gravity. It seemed as if the woman's reserve of patience was limitless. Having the opportunity to see Dr. Patel's change was really incredible. She is still dressed in her scrubs as she stands at the control panel, and the camera system records her as she approaches it. The embodiment of this, on the other hand, is often referred to as her expression. In the end, it was discovered that each and every human medical ship had dormant abilities. Rather of referring to them as armament, Dr. Patel emphasized that they were defensive medical systems. It was quickly apparent that what seemed to be ordinary medical scanners erupted from the hull. Nonetheless, their objective was to map every conceivable vulnerability, weakness, and death. The calmness in her speech sends chills down the spines of those who have a natural instinct to stay away from potentially dangerous situations. She gazes up at the beaming photographers. Due to a defect in the design, the communication links of the spacecraft reverberated with the echo of the voices of both Commander Vale and Dr. Patel. From this point on, I will make an effort to explain everything to you using medical terms. Instantaneously, my spacecraft happens to be a patient, and I am the physician. I am completely proficient in the use of such medical scanners. They were able to identify areas of structural stress with the accuracy of a surgeon during the operation. The moving thrusters of the spaceship were fine-tuned to produce pressure differentials that were capable of shattering a ship's spine with the same ease as a fragile bone. Patel asserts that you have just 10 seconds to disarm what you are holding. The message that Dr. Patel transmitted to Earth consisted of 3 words. We murdered children. In reaction, all human ship stations and colonies broadcast the same phrase. No more nice. This resulted in the 12-hour ultimatum which Ambassador Rodriguez personally gave to the Council while I was present here. When that occurs, I will be compelled to do emergency surgery on your spaceship until it is repaired. It is my duty to let you know that there is almost no possibility of survival after this therapy, in spite of the fact that it was the appropriate course of action. Vatul gave in too late. It was more intimidating than the standard armor that she wore when she entered the council chamber, since she was wearing a crisp black business suit rather than the diplomatic robes that are often worn. She issued a warning that in 11 hours and 58 minutes, humans will demonstrate that Earth is a planet that is prone to death. It is at that time that you are required to entirely give, she continues. Rodriguez was given the instruction by Zax, the top counselor, to grin in the event that we rejected. In response, the members of the council chuckled. There was a grin that appeared on Rodriguez's face, but it was more restrained and patient than it was diplomatic. Her words are something that I will never forget. Because this was such an extraordinary occurrence, I had an overpowering need to dig into the center of the planet that was closest to me. By simply refusing to be kind, she made it quite clear that they would destroy the council without resorting to the use of force or military power. The management of your commerce routes, the construction of your medical facilities, the operation of your mines, and the maintenance of your ships have all involved a significant amount of our time. The tone of Zack's voice was cynical when he remarked, "Yuk, stop being nice." Rodriguez then offered a little nod in response. "Counselor, could you please explain to me what would take place if all human doctors suddenly chose to take a vacation? Imagine a scenario in which every single pilot who is flying human transport aircraft suddenly makes the decision to get out of the air, makes the decision to take a break after all of the human technicians have stopped being helpful, which results in the council chamber becoming silent for a period of 12 hours. The world's fabled tolerance with bureaucratic nonsense finally ran out. I can't even begin to convey how thrilled I am right now. It was the patient zero moment, when the world's patience finally ran out. Whenever happens to you, he says, don't go any farther. I've spent the last week living this and finally ran out. 11 hours and 47 minutes were allotted to the council in order for them to imagine a galaxy in which people didn't get any assistance. The journeyers hoped to create a world in which people actually mattered to one another, at the same time that human stations were tapping into systems they had never met before and human ships were moving in perfect harmony. People all around the world were getting ready to demonstrate that being patient is not a sign of weakness. Because time was running out, the Council's chance of remaining oblivious to the origins of persons who came from a realm of death was decreasing. Following a period of 12 hours during which they did not get a response from their end, the Council was ready to provide evidence suggesting that they should never confuse patience with weakness. Everyone in the Council chamber grew incredibly enraged over surrender procedures and the appropriate method to vote when all of a sudden, the face of Commander Olivia Blake appeared on each and every screen in the room. This category included displays that were used for a variety of purposes, including communication, entertainment, medical, and even personal data pads. It is still a mystery to this day how they were able to pull it off. "Good morning," she began, as if she were going to deliver a weather forecast rather than a revelation about the power that mankind has. Our intentions were good, and we really did mean them, but with your commitment to learning, I am not exaggerating when I say that I saw this phenomenon personally when the spectral fleet manifested above Council space. Have you been thinking about the mining activities that I described earlier now? Since the beginning of time, several civilizations have been constructing spacecraft inside of asteroids. Imagine that you are a conceited predator who, for the last 10 years, has been experimenting with something that, rather than being covered in combat armor, has been concealed beneath a sheepskin. It is my opinion that this is the most effective method to describe the appearance of the phantom fleet of ships. Blake remained persistent in her assertion throughout the day. As a result of the unique tranquility that your voice exudes, you are able to intimidate potential predators. During the time that you were spending demeaning us, we properly constructed this fleet inside your boundaries by making use of mining licenses. Are you interested in learning the key to our success? Everybody, even the council, showed an interest in it. In accordance with your regulations, mining operations are permitted to process and shape the materials that they acquire. Nonetheless, we were able to transform them into fully operational ships that come equipped with weaponry while remaining discreet. When it came to the unusual design of the Phantom Fleet, all of that metal was used. The absence of the typical blueprints for the Council gave the impression that these vessels were constructed by an individual who had done research on the construction of warships, and believed that it would be a fantastic idea to have a handbook ready to go. Consider, on the other hand, the possibility that we might amplify its dreadful powers. She proceeded to study her nails as if she were not the leader of the galaxy's most magnificent display of military strength. Blake continued to investigate her nails. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. We are keeping our fingers crossed that you will treat us with respect and decency, but we are also aware that it is quite unlikely that you will do this. At that moment, individuals began to respond to the situation. It is peculiar how things transpire, but all of the ships belonging to the Ghost Fleet went into shield mode at the same time. On the other hand, sensors located 3 sectors away observed the massive rise in energy. The mining lasers that you approved do precision strikes, the gravity manipulators perform targeting maneuvers, and the medical scanners perform targeting. All of these elements work together to efficiently complete precision strikes. Due to the fact that the Ghost Fleet was utterly out of their league, the military advisors to the Council were going through a collective fear. At every time a demonstration is called for, how is it possible to deal with tactical databases when one is confronted by an adversary who is capable of transforming everyday goods into dangerous weapons? During the process of putting together this fleet, you gave careful approval to each and every component, system, and capability. When Blake, with a professorial grin on his face, is going to deliver the answer to a particularly perplexing enigma, this is the portion that is going to be the most enjoyable experience. There is no evidence that anybody has considered the possibility of such a fundamental extraterrestrial species having a need for industrial mining lasers that are powerful enough to penetrate battleship armor. A last blow was delivered by Blake, who was aiming for the kill. Her visage changed into something that would make even the most jaded warrior species want to hide behind their command consoles. I interrupt, trying to keep my voice cool concerning computer historical notation. This speech is now required reading at every major military academy, and her countenance morphed into something that would make those students want to hide behind their command systems. How did you express gratitude for our patience? We tried our best to be courteous, to fill out your paperwork and observe your laws, and to smile in response to your condescension. Do you have any idea how you showed satisfaction? You posed a threat to the safety of our children. 20 minutes later, the Council made a decision that was very certainly the quickest political choice they had ever made. They gave in during known space. There is a possibility that the bureaucracy will move at an extraordinary speed when a group of irate people organize a fleet of ships. The universe came to the realization that making an effort to be kind is not a sign of failure, but rather a warning that the individual is about to expose the reasons why being kind is more of a politeness than a need. It was anticlimactic in the sense that there were no major battles or dramatic final stands before to the Council's surrender. as the ancient proverb says. In a group of politicians, they came to the unexpected revelation that they were capable of acting rapidly when they were motivated. There will never be anything that can compare to the signing ceremony. Ambassador Rodriguez took a fountain pen, a traditional writing utensil from Earth, into the council chamber. She did this because she was of the opinion that some statements should be made with ink rather than digital signature. The council has identified this group as the first to ever use the device, the secretary said, in a positive manner. They will never be anything that can compare to the signing ceremony when they were motivated to compare it with ink rather than digital signatures. On that day, a new cosmic order was established. Rather than pursuing vengeance, giving up power, or demanding restitution, humanity chose to take a different approach. We transcended the craving for retribution and opposed temporal laws to prevent future assassinations, a philosophy that has held true for thousands of years. The most terrifying part was when they began making repairs to the problems. In the case of your standard permit application, for example, they reduced the method from 472 phases to 12 stages by analyzing your bureaucratic processes. This was done in order to expedite the process. A positive response has been received by the shift, the reorganization of trade routes for the sake of efficiency rather than political preference, the mandatory sharing of technology with limits against misuse, and the consistency of medical treatment across species borders were some of the other benefits. Even if it appears sensible, how does it connect to the traditions that we have already established? Rodriguez flashed that new human smile, the one that implied they were done playing nice but willing to be reasonable, in response to a council member's grouse during a particularly dramatic reform session. The constituent was inquiring about the 17 separate permits that are required to deliver emergency medical supplies, ahead of the collective memories. The Ghost Fleet was constructed in secret by Commander Blake in order to improve the organization's ability to react to natural disasters and humanitarian crises better. Rather from being symbols of conquest, the ships that were secretly constructed became symbols of hope. Admiral Chen, who was in charge of the reorganization of the military, came up with a number of strange ideas with practical training. Their greatest achievement was not in demonstrating their power. Rather, it was in demonstrating the possibility for progress that might be achieved if we could only transcend our propensity to blindly obey rules. Once we have completed 2 cycles, it is incredible to observe how they have changed us. They made the decision not to crush us with force and economic pressure, despite the fact that they had the ability to suppress us. It seemed more like they were pointing us in the right direction. They waited patiently for us to demonstrate that we did not deserve it, and then they demonstrated to us why Earth ought to have been referred to as a death world rather than a manageable planet. Human diplomatic ships continue to bring medical supplies, mining boats assist in the exploitation of resources, and merchants promote commerce. On the other hand, nobody takes their assistance lightly, and nobody forgets the last time that people's patience was put to the test. The galaxy learned this lesson the hard way, yet every species passes it on to the next generation. There is a human proverb that goes something like this: kindness should never be misinterpreted for weakness. During the last moments of the recording, it is important to bring this up. In addition to the list of reasons why every council chamber now has a sign that reads, "Patient is a virtue, but human patience is a warning," and most importantly, it is a reason why the galaxy has finally come to the realization that the species that smiles the most is not the one that smiles, but the one that smiles. Remember that you should not just cease being courteous in response to someone telling you to stop being nice, regardless of how many times they urge you to stop being kind. I really feel that today's lecture was beneficial. In addition to demonstrating that all acts of kindness were, in reality, nothing more than pre-war exercises, It further contributes to the healing and building processes.